All right, should be good to go, Lynn, when you're ready. Just for everybody else, my name is Chris Amundson. I'm the past president of IAFERD. And this is Lynn Jenkins. She works for the Department of Ed, correct, Lynn? Is that correct? Okay. And I'll let you take it away.
Great, thank you. All right, welcome everyone. And I know people are still coming in, so that sounds great. I've been able to get to some of the sessions this morning, and there's been some really great stuff. Lots of things about specific kinds of activities or approaches to health and physical education. And I know that those are really helpful, and I look forward to looking and viewing more of those. That's one of the reasons that these recordings are so helpful, and I really appreciate this opportunity to share and learn with each other. If you have also been on all morning, which I suspect that you have, please, I hope that you've also taken some time for yourself. I know it's a long morning on screens, which many of us are not used to or getting used to, unfortunately, but please, I love to see your faces if you can share your video, but I also totally understand if you're eating lunch or need to get up and walk around or find a more comfortable spot. So please do what works for you. This is a chance to kind of step back from some of those specifics that you may have been hearing about or seeing this morning and think about a little bit of the bigger picture here in Iowa for health and physical education. So I'm going to go through some of our requirements, recommendations, and resources, both those that are available right now, as well as some things that we are working on and that we hope to have available soon. So please feel free to ask questions. I want this to be a chance for you to do that. Know that I will answer those questions as best I can. There are some things that I may not have, all the answers to, and as we learn and grow together during this time. So I will keep the chat up. You do also have the ability to unmute yourself and talk. So what I'll ask is maybe when we have some chance for questions, I'll have you either raise your hand or if you prefer to talk rather than write things in the chat, that works too. So we'll have some time to do that. So I'm going to go through, let me just get my slides to advance here. Oh, there we go. And I'm moving things around on my screen here. So sometimes that takes me a little bit to get both the video and the chat adjusted. So today, again, I'm gonna just kind of go through the standards adoption for health and physical education. Then we'll talk about physical education, again, those requirements, those recommendations, and some of the frequently asked questions that I have gotten so far or that I do get, and some of the kind of ideas or answers around those. And then we'll do the same for health education. Again, those requirements, those recommendations, and the FAQ there, and then talk a little bit more about the resources. And I will go through some of the resources online and some of the things that you can access or that you can ask for. There we go. Okay, so this is a really brief timeline for our standards review. So there was a team, and I was not a member of this team, but I know some of you on here were. If anyone wants to chime in about being a part of that review process, during the 2018-2019 year, a team went through standards for health and physical education and then made a recommendation to the Department of Education on what those standards should look like. Not everything that was recommended was adopted. I know that there were some pieces that the team really hoped to see that didn't quite go through, but we are moving in a good direction here in Iowa where we are moving towards standards and moving towards having more resources and more connections for you health and physical education professionals out there. So we'll keep working at it and appreciate all the advocacy and all the work that you have all done to make this happen. So the standards were adopted in March of 2019, and these are recommended standards. So sometimes we also call them voluntary. They are not required, but we do recommend these standards. And a big part of my role is to help you all again implement these recommended standards so that we can have some more consistency throughout our programs throughout Iowa. That being said, we certainly don't need or want all of our programs to look the same. I think it's been really great to see, again, on the presentations this morning and more this afternoon about all the different ways that health and physical education can be implemented, and ways that social emotional learning is a part of it, and gamification and online and all these great strategies. And it's good for you to know, to know your strengths and skills, to know what the needs of your students and your community are, and what resources you have locally, and to be able to build a program that really works for you. And I'm hearing some really innovative ways that is happening, and ways that might look as we move forward, and as things really look different or may look different in this coming year. But how do we keep building those strong programs and those really strong connections with students? So our standards adopted in March are the national standards. And I know this makes it easier for some who were already following those standards, and for some of the resources that are already out there, and some really great things that we can use. So for physical education, it is the Society of Health and Physical Educators, so SHAPE America's physical education standards and grade level outcomes. And we do sometimes call those grade level standards, but they're the GLOWs, are the grade level outcomes. And for health, it is the National Education Standards. So again, these are the health education standards and performance indicators. And these were adopted as is. So we didn't make any changes for Iowa for these. And then in the department also opened up a position for a education consultant to support health and physical education. It has been a number of years since that position has been available or filled. And so I started in July of 2019 as the half-time consultant for health and physical education. So I get to really dive into, again, how do we support these things, and how do we share out? One of my big strategies for that, and something that all of our subject areas use, is a leadership team. And so we have a team with representation from across the state for health and physical education. And this is both teachers and admin as we can, institutes of higher education, our AEA representatives. And we come together 3 times a year and really talk about how do we support this, and what are some projects that we can do. And I'll talk about those a little bit more later. Please know that I am continue to build this team. A lot of this is new, and I'm still building those partnerships and relationships across the state. Would really like to hear from you if being a part of that leadership team is something that you feel very strongly about. Especially would like a little bit more representation from our smaller or rural districts, and ones that are a little bit farther to the corners of our state. So if you know somebody who you think this would be a good fit for, please feel free to contact me, and that information is available. And we can work on, and I'll share with you some of the things that we're doing a little bit later in this presentation. Okay, so now I'm going to go into a little bit about the requirements first. So we're going to kind of layer that up with our requirements, and then we'll go to recommendations in those layers. So we step way back into our requirements, and those come from Iowa Code and Iowa Administrative Code. So much of what is referred to as Chapter 12. And there are content specifications for the different topics that need to be taught in health and physical education. There are some graduation requirements that are around these. There are offer and teach in the high school settings. There's a little bit about our waivers, our excusals and exemptions. And this is something that I get, or that our school improvement consultants get questions about, you know, around what does that look like and who is that for, and what decisions are made at the individual school or building level, and what is allowed at the state level. And then those teacher licensure and endorsements. So again, these are all part of those requirement pieces. Okay, so when we look at physical education, these are the content specifications, again, that are written in there, and it does vary from grade level. So these don't look exactly the same when you talk about K-5 or 9-12. There are some things that are a little bit different, but these are the kind of topics that should be covered. And this includes our physical fitness activities. And again, in those later grades, that increase cardiovascular endurance, muscular strength, and flexibility. Those sports and games, tumbling and gymnastics, rhythms and dance, water safety, and leisure and lifetime activities. So and these are pretty broad categories, right? But these are the kinds of things that should be covered at some point during those grade bands where they are listed. So that doesn't mean you have to do every single one of these every single year. And so that's an opportunity for, again, for teachers or schools to really look at what the needs of their students are, or what the interests of their students are, and what the strengths of their teachers and programs are, and how to prioritize these out in the grade bands. One of the things I get a lot of questions about is the water safety piece, and the importance of that, but also sometimes the struggle of what does that look like, and how do we teach that? How do we teach that if you have access to water or to a pool, and how do you teach that, when you don't, when it's a classroom or a gym, or what kind of space that happens in. So those are the content, again, requirements. And when we're going to go to our website and look a little bit more about other requirements, but feel free to ask if you have questions about those. Again, put those in the chat. So then we have our standards. So these are recommended standards, and one of the things that comes up is what is the the alignment between our standards and our content requirements. And I get this even more in health, and we'll look at that. So there are ways that again, teachers or schools can think about. So here are the kinds of content I want to teach. This is the main kinds of activities we want to do, and here's the standards I want to focus on. And that can happen either way. You can choose to figure out which standards you want to focus on at what times during the year, or what grade levels first, and then match that to some of the content pieces. Or you can really figure out which content pieces you want to focus on or want to have during certain times of the year. Maybe that's based on what space you have available, or what season it is, that students or community may be participating in that kind of activity, and then take that and align that with these standards. So here are the 5 anchor standards. Again, these are from Shape America. They are the national standards. And to really think about those motor skills and movement patterns, that applying the knowledge, concepts, principles, and strategies and tactics. That standard 3, demonstrating the knowledge and skills and health enhancing level of physical activity and fitness. 4, and I know in some of those other presentations, really talking about social emotional learning and which standards and how to align some of that work, which is important always, and is getting a lot of much needed attention right now, that we really support students in that. So our standards, 4, about responsible personal and social behavior, and our standard 5 about recognizing the value of physical activity. And again, as many of you know, these are broken down even further into those grade level outcomes, so you can look specifically about what that goal is, what you're trying to meet. or what you want students to learn and know and be able to do. So one of the things that is available is there are some guidance about the standards. So for those who using standards might be new for physical education, there's a guidance document on our website. And again, I'll navigate to that in a little bit later. And it helps kind of walk through those pieces to think about how to read and how to use these. So that, the how to read is one of those important pieces, and understanding that, again, just like those content specifications, not all standards need to be addressed at every grade level. Some of them, aren't developmentally appropriate until some of the later levels, and some of them you need to just build upon those skills and knowledge. So being able to figure out as a team how that works and what that looks like for you. These are just examples of how they are read, again, at the elementary, middle school, and then those high school levels. In that document, we have also included, and this is from SHAPE as well, and this is a visual that many teachers have found really useful when they're thinking about prioritizing, the number of minutes for physical education and for each of the contents is locally determined. And so that's one of the questions that comes up a lot is, depending on if I'm meeting with students every day for 20 minutes, or if I'm meeting with students every 6 days, for 20 to 50 minutes, that looks very different. That program and their ability to meet, or how many of the standards and content to really dive into, that's those are vastly different time frames to kind of do that. So this has been helpful, and that many teachers have thought about, how do I prioritize that? So I like to think about it like any other subject area, and that we really need to build those skills first. When you think about any other kind of literacy, if we think about reading, you need to be able to identify and know what those letters are and how they put together, and then you get into the middle school, where you can really dive into different kinds of genres or different kinds of content, where you learn from reading. So you learn to read, you read to learn, and then you expand that into your life and figure out what that looks like. And PE is the same way, right? So we learn those skills, we really focus on what are those fundamental, skills, motor skills and movement patterns, and then we expand that experience and that knowledge in that middle school, that you can really explore and find different ways to use those. And then as we get into high school, and I see a lot of programs do this, then there's a lot more choice and voice here, where students are able to really get their personal goal setting and figure out for lifetime activities, what is the kind of movement that they want to do, or that they can be a part of, and prioritizing a program that kind of helps that progression also. So some of the questions I get that come into me from schools, or when we're able to, when school was still in session, one of the things I really enjoyed being able to do is to go out and visit and really see how things were working, and the way that things looked, as well as what challenges the schools were really facing in order to provide really high quality physical education programs. So both how that PE program looked in the school, as well as how it was a part of the larger school community and building a culture of safety and health in that school. And I really enjoyed seeing those, and I really look forward to a time where we can get back to that. So know that as soon as I am able, and I know it may be a while, I would love to come out and visit again and see those students and hear from you all. But safety, space, and time is something that comes up, right? And these are a lot of times those challenges. And this was a challenge before, and I know that it continues to be a challenge, or maybe a bigger challenge now. Um, so these are decisions that are made by your school, by, you know, either at the building level or at the district level. You know, best practice, and we can certainly talk about that. Um, is that you are not asked to have student ratios that are vastly different than the rest of the subjects. You know, so that's certainly a best practice, and I know as a challenge sometimes in those schools. Right now, you may be thinking about, you know, is there a space that you used to have to share, and so was there a, you know, a cafeteria that was also the gymnasium, that was also the, you know, multi-purpose room that, you know, served as a library sometimes. And so how do you use that space when we're talking about you know, if there are smaller pods of students, or if social distancing is something that you need to create or have in your schools. Hearing from some that using outdoor spaces is something that might be happening more, and that changing the time. So I want to take a minute here too to leave some space. So if there are questions, or if you have, I, you know, want to share about what this looks like for safety, not missing it. And I do not have, I know some are sharing on Twitter for different reasons. I don't have that pulled up. So if there are things that you're sharing there, I will go back and try to look at those. But I don't have access to that right now. Okay. The other question, some other questions that I get have to do with accessibility for students with disabilities, and this comes up a lot from teachers too. Is that there needing to be some more support and guidance around how do we work with that team, and understand the IEP process, and understand how to serve all our students. So there is some guidance that we're working on, and it's just about ready to be released. I've worked with our special education team. I worked with some of our adapted PE specialists from across the state, and learned a lot. There was some really good conversations, and so there's a short guidance coming out to, which is a good start to help PE teachers understand the IEP process a little bit more, and to think a little bit more about how, what is that placement might look like. And so what are some ways that you can be involved in it, and or understand what that means. You know, physical education is a required service for all of our students, and especially for our students with disabilities. And so how do we understand how to be a part of that process and team and serve all our students? And sometimes that just means having a more inclusive environment in our, you know, in our general regular physical education classroom, and knowing how to use some of those best practices. And that's going to be a little bit more in some modules that will be available. But when you have students who do need some specific accommodations or modifications, how do you understand that a little bit better? And it is, you know, it is not always easy to kind of wade through that, and knowing that sometimes there is a disconnect between the physical educators and the special educators and others on that team. And so this has been a good opportunity to really talk about how do we work together more, and how do we understand each other to serve students the best that we can. And again, I fully acknowledge that this may look different in this coming fall, because of online learning, or because of the way that schools need to adapt to some of these challenges that are coming up. The Department of Education does have some webinars on specifically about special education. They do not specifically address physical education, but especially if you are working with many students with disabilities, those webinars are a nice way to understand some of the supports or ideas for what those IEP teams and what schools should be doing to work to meet those needs in this coming year. The scope and sequence, again, is a question that comes up and that schools sometimes struggle with. Some schools really do a great job of coming together as a team and talking through what does elementary PE look like, what does it look like in middle school and high school. But I know that's also a challenge. And for some schools, there's not a broad team for these subjects. And so how do you kind of think that through? Again, in that guidance document, like we looked at, there's the table that can kind of help in a very broad way think through it. Physical education versus physical activity. This comes from administrators a lot, this kind of question. Iowa does have required physical activity minutes as part of our Healthy Kids Act. This is Healthy Kids Act is also where the CPR requirement lies. And understanding that physical activity is necessary daily and is necessary for students for lots of reasons, and that it is different than physical education. So I know when this Healthy Kids Act was being talked about, it was not the intention to take away from physical education. The intent is that this physical activity was in addition to our physical education minutes, but that's not always how it's interpreted. So understanding that that physical activity can happen and should happen within physical education, but there's lots of other things that happen during that time and space too. So working together with teachers and staff across the school to meet both of those and to make sure that they're really robust. I know I just talked to a school recently who was thinking about how their schedule looks very different when they're having classes of students come through and not trying to mix equipment, or just seeing one class for a concentrated amount of time and then not seeing them for a while. And so how do you work again with those classroom teachers to really set the stage with physical education and then help those teachers provide quality physical activity that might complement what they're learning or how to keep building those skills. And then the waivers are a piece that comes up a lot, and there is guidance on that. So if there's time at the end, I'll navigate to that, but there's some information around that. I think the important thing to know here, and that I get questions about sometimes, is that it is not appropriate to waive an entire class. These need to be decided on an individual basis. So that's what I see the most. Students cannot, a school can't say all students in choir or all students in marching band or all students in an AP science class don't take physical education. That's not the way these waivers work. They are individual and need to be decided that way. So there are some exemptions and excusals for our seniors in high school, and there are some for other students also, but that happens at the school level and at the individual student level. So we're going to go into health education and talk a little bit about that. So just like in physical education, the requirements in Chapter 12 include these content specifications. And this is different from grade level, for each grade level, but this is kind of generally what they include. So health education should include content around personal health, food and nutrition, environmental health, and that's when I get questions a lot. What does that mean? What does that look like? Right? So how do we understand how the environment around us affects our health, as well as how we affect the health of the environment around us? So what does this mean and look like, both in our communities, in our individual classrooms, in our families? This is an important piece that is not always understood, how to teach that or how to have content around that. Safety and survival skills, consumer health, family health, substance abuse, human sexuality, self-esteem, stress management, and interpersonal relationships. So again, this emotional and social health, things that really lend themselves to social emotional learning. health resources, prevention and control of disease, and characteristics of communicable diseases. And then our standards, again, they are national standards. Can I get this to change? So for health, again, they have eight anchor standards that are consistent across the different grade bands and levels. And these look very different than those content. So there's a lot of conversation about, can we get those to line up? You know, the content specifications are legislated, so that's something that takes quite a bit to change. But what you can think about is, how do we line these up? And do you want to, again, choose which content to teach and then figure out what standards you want to be a part of that? Or do you start with the standards and then think about what content makes the most sense? And both ways work. It just depends on how you want to align your lessons and curriculum. For the big change in health education is the skills-based. And again, I saw some great presentations that dive into this more, which we're not going to do here, but there are some great resources about it. Standard 1 has to do with concepts and understanding that basic knowledge for health. And then the rest of these are really about building skills. And these are valuable skills both in health and in life. So how do we analyze influences, access valid information, practice and use our interpersonal communication skills, decision-making skills, goal setting, health enhancing behaviors, and advocacy. So some schools teach health as a part of their physical education program. They're kind of a melded piece. Sometimes this happens in other content areas. So at high school, sometimes health happens as part of a FCS class. Often in the elementary grades, health is taught here, there, and everywhere. So we're really working on how do we, understand this and again, provide some high quality consistency in building these skills and knowledge so that we're really enhancing students' ability to make healthy choices. So this is what the standards look like, and we have guidance around the standards as well, just like the physical education standards. There's a couple of pages that really help somebody who's new to these understand how to read them, understand how to apply them just a little bit. And they do look a little bit different for health as opposed to physical education. So some of the things I get in health education has to do with this, difference between our health standards versus health literacy, which is a part of our 21st century skills. So this is complicated. What the answer that I mostly give is those health literacy skills, which are requirements under Iowa Core, they are encompassed in our new health standards. So if you are addressing the national health standards and the recommended standards for Iowa, you are addressing these health literacy skills. So you are meeting this. What's a little bit tricky is these 21st century skills were set to be reviewed this spring due to lots of different factors that hasn't happened yet, but they are set to be reviewed. So I don't have a timeline on that, but we hope to work towards, again, an alignment between these two. But I think right now and moving forward, if you have a program that is meeting the health standards, you are addressing the health literacy skills. They are all encompassed in there, and I can help walk through that with you if you'd like, or again, I know others who have really helped me walk through that and who would be happy to kind of look at that with you. Where, when, and who. So again, health is much more fluid than physical education. There is not a specific time or place, and not always a specific person who is teaching health. So really understanding where and how it is being taught is a little tricky. And so it is nice for me to be able to talk to schools and understand what that looks like. And I have a checklist that is not available on our site, but has been helpful for some schools to kind of think through what physical education and health education look like. And I'll pull that up in a little bit. Appropriate practices. So again, we really want to make that switch between just a knowledge-based health education program where you're talking about facts and looking up facts and writing reports on facts, that it's good to have some information, but research and best practice shows us that to really change health behaviors, we need to build skills. And so focusing on those standards will really help you build appropriate practices and activities that build those skills for students. And then there are some resources. So we are required to provide some resources around specific content, and I'll show you what those look like on our website. So some of the things that are available, again, we have guidance for the standards. There is guidance regarding physical education in high school programs. So this has to do with that compliance piece, and this was written and available before I was a part of the department, but has been really helpful and talks through some of those what if situations if you're thinking about excusals or waivers and what works and what doesn't, and how to make sure that you're understanding that. There is guidance on the health education standards. There's a list of resources, and then there's also an email group. This is fairly new, and we're trying it out. So if you would like to be a part of email group for health education or physical education, please email me and I will add you to that group. And what that allows you to do is that you can send an email to the group and it will go out to everyone on that list. So we have about 50 or so in each of these groups right now. It's not being used a whole lot yet, but I have seen this be really helpful for other groups. So I'm on a group that has to do with our food service professionals for the state of Iowa. And I see them use their email groups a lot, asking, sometimes general, sometimes really specific questions about what resources they may want or a challenge they might have or something that came up that worked really well. So so I'm going to keep these up and we're going to see how they're used. And if this isn't the best fit, then we'll think of another way to help connect. I know that many of you are already connecting on Twitter or on other social media, and I certainly don't want to, I think those are really good places too. So I do have Twitter. It is not my biggest strength, but I am trying, and I appreciate those of you out there who are helping to show me really great ways to connect in that platform. We have a newsletter that comes from School Wellness, but incorporates health and physical education content. And then we have, again, those checklists. So if you're interested in seeing those, let me know. Coming soon, we are working on, with that leadership team, professional development modules. So these live on AEA Learning Online. We will have 5 modules for each subject, so for health and then for physical education. These will be available to view on their own as is, or you can bundle them together so you can see all 5 modules, and it's a teacher license renewal course. So these are not done yet, but I hope to have more information soon and to share out what we can. And these, I hope are helpful ways to just continue to build and learn learn about having great programs. And then again, coming soon is this guidance for physical education for students with disabilities. So I'm going to stop share here. I'm not seeing any questions. I just want to double check. I don't know if you have questions from anywhere else. And I'm going to take you to, sorry, I've pulled up I wanted to take you to the website here quickly. I know we're just about out of time. The last couple of slides kind of walk through this process, so I'm just going to show you here. You should see the Iowa Core page. And if you go to the bottom, the recommended standards will link you to the physical education and health education webpage. And this is where I will keep resources updated. So hopefully you see that now. And this is where the guidance lives. This is where those compliance kind of pieces live. It links you to a health education page that's similar. Again, sign up for this newsletter. A little bit about endorsement if you're new or trying to figure that piece out, and then those related resources. You know, there are, again, other specific to COVID guidance and information that the department is putting out. I know that not a lot of that is specific to PE, although it is useful to have and to understand kind of how all those layers work together. The last thing I will show you, because it's not on this page, is what that assessment looks like, that self-assessment looks like if you're interested. So this, you know, it's again a quick checkbox. The health education comes from the Chapter 12 matrix, which some of you may have seen before, but this is a way that if you wanted to kind of double check which grade levels you're meeting content, as well as which grade levels you're addressing different standards, and then some of those best practices. And those modules are really focusing on or aligned to these characteristics of effective curriculum for both health and physical education and appropriate practices. So we get a little bit more into those best practices in the module pieces. All right. So that is the information that I have for you. Again, my contact information is available both through the site through IAFERD, or if you go to the department site, it is available there. Please feel free to reach out and let me know if you have questions or need assistance with something. Also, if you have great ideas that you want to share out, please let me know those too. I would love to help, you know, spread the word about something that's working really well for you. And I wish you the best of luck. Have a great rest of your day and good start to the school year.
All right. Thank you, Lynn. Just a reminder to everybody on here. We've got a few more hours of sessions if you can handle it, if you're not too tired yet. There's a lot of really good sessions and still. Also, all sessions, including the live ones like this, are going to be on our YouTube channel. If you registered, RSVP'd, either tonight or tomorrow morning, probably tomorrow morning so I can get some sleep, I'm going to send out the links of our playlist to everybody on that. So don't worry about if you want to go back and watch this stuff, go back over, because Lynn gave a lot of great information. So go back over and just kind of comb through it a little bit. I will get that out to you. If you have not RSVP'd yet, go into the site, go to the coming soon page, and you can go down and RSVP, and I'll have your email and your information. I can get it out to you tomorrow. So, all right. Well, thank you very much, and hope everybody has a great rest of your day. Thank you. Thanks, Lynn.